Thank you, Stuart. So my role today is to share with you some Icelandic takeaways from my time of working and living here since 2019. I think a good place to start with that conversation is actually some reminders about Icelandic characteristics. The reason for this is a lot of these characteristics will very much drive your work experience as you work alongside Icelandic companies, and particularly Kadeco. So looking first at the fact that it's an island nation, to give you an idea of scale, in size, it has about 40% of the footprint of the United Kingdom, so it's actually quite a big island. Its population, 360,000 people, which is a really small population. It's, for those of us in the UK, it's taking the city of Bristol and spreading them around 40% of the United Kingdom. And then, as we saw in 2018, on top of that, you then had 10 million additional visitors to the country. The next point on here is about the weather. It's not as cold here as you would imagine because of the Gulf Stream that comes around the western side of the island. However, it is a land of proper weather with all the seasons in one day, and every now and then you'll get weather warnings that actually tell you not to leave your home. It's also an island of geological events, volcanoes that we know of around the world, of earthquakes, and the island itself is actually growing 5 centimetres per year, which to me always amazes me. The reason for sharing this is the result is that the people who live here are very resilient and resourceful and great in a crisis. With regard to resources, it's a beautiful, beautiful country. It has breathtaking nature, it has endless clean water, it has amazing geothermal energy. As a result of this, sustainability is at the core of everything that happens here. Finally, location. It could have been really easy for Iceland, in its location in the North Atlantic, to have become a forgotten island. However, there are lots of reasons why it has a strong position on the international stage. Probably most currently, if we look at its role in future Arctic politics and its success with the COVID response. Its place between the America and European continents gives it the perfect location for where businesses can connect. And the culture of these two continents is reflected in the business culture that you will be working with, in the systems and processes embedded in the country. It's also the perfect location for a new, competitive, responsible international hub airport, which is what I'm helping the Isavia team working with at Keflavik International Airport. Moving now to culture. As we mentioned earlier, the people of Iceland are very resourceful. This is largely because of the weather and the big geological events that happen around them on a regular basis. They are Nordic, not Scandinavian. I think that's an important thing that I'm reminded in my conversations with them. They're proud and tall as a people. And they're also very entrepreneurial. I notice in my time as I'm walking down Lagavega on my weekends, how, given the COVID situation, unfortunately, some businesses are now closing down. However, pop-ups just appear from nowhere with great ideas on new ways of doing business. They're really creative as a culture as well. I'm blown away by the amazing art and crafts that I see and the amazing sculptures you see all over the island, for the music that you hear on the radios here, all for an island of just 360,000 people. They're really well educated, with 45% of the adult population having been through tertiary education, and they're really well travelled internationally. In fact, I'm often reminded in my work on the airport how Keflavik is not just about an airport for tourists, it's actually the local people's gateway as well to the rest of the world, and they like to travel in their free time. I think it's important to stress as well the importance of the fact that they communicate Icelandically, and I know that might sound really obvious, but their English is so good, it's easy to forget that Icelandic is their first language. If you want to have a go at learning Icelandic yourself, go ahead. It's actually supposed to be one of the most difficult languages to learn, but there's lots of apps and ways to learn Icelandic here in country. And I know that your Icelandic colleagues will really appreciate you having a go. But I think the key point about communicating Icelandically is not just about the language, it's about the communication style itself. They're very informal in their communication style, preferring phone calls or chat over emails. They're pretty direct in how they respond, and they're very efficient with their words. You'll get much shorter responses back from them. Honesty is valued, and they don't like to overpromise on their commitments. So if you need anything from them, you just need to be really clear on what you need, by when, and from who. Moving to local economy, as Palmi said in his presentation, it's a country that's very sensitive to world events economically, with the financial crisis in 2008 and the collapse of WOW Air back in 2018. However, it's important to also say that it's very resilient. Following the volcano and the volcanic eruption of 2010, tourism bounced back to over 400% ahead of COVID. Ahead of COVID, tourism represented 8.6% of GDP, but there are a number of other important business sectors as well that you need to remember when you work here. Firstly is obviously fishing with its rich fish resources, and also aluminium, largely due to it being an energy-intensive industry and therefore making the most of the low-cost green energy that you can get locally here. The airport is another key economic asset, not just for tourists, as I've discussed, but also for business, for cargo, and actually, quite importantly, for transfer passengers, which is a big part of their hub strategy, to attract those transfer passengers to stay, maybe for a day or two, or use it on their way to either continent. Sustainability is another economic driver and an important one. It's important for the country, given their commitments to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It's important to business, and it's also important here to the local people of Reykjanesbær, given its role as a district in generating quite a large proportion of the local green energy. Personally, I just know there has to be a lot more that we can do in the sustainability field here in Iceland. In fact, I think it's Iceland's green focus, its great quality of life, its pandemic-safe living, and its just amazing nature outside of the city that I'm sure will help Iceland and Reykjanesbær be a future destination both for investment and for living for international businesses and people. But my key learning, I think, with regards to economy is whatever we do, we need to do it responsibly. Any investment must generate a good return on investment. It must generate economic benefits, local benefits, and it must work in support of the local economy. I'm reminded of the tourism pledge that Inspired by Iceland campaign put up for tourists visiting Iceland. And I think that's a nice thing to think about with businesses who are looking to work here, maybe to generate their own Icelandic pledge. With regard to working, I've worked all over the world, and I have to say it's one of my most favourite countries to work in. My first experience of working here was actually in the PMT procurement, which we started in 2019, when I was in a similar position to you. Again, it was led by Bird & Bird in partnership with Isavia. It was informative, it was transparent, it was credible, it was collaborative, and it was fun. Isavia delivered on every promise, every step of the way. When you work here, work-life balance is really important to Icelanders, so we need to respect that as international businesses. And actually, I would encourage you to learn from that and to take some of that into your own life. Days are shorter, but they're a lot more efficient. Another area where we can learn is in diversity. It really is a core value here. Many local companies have set 50% targets for diversity, and in many cases, they've exceeded that already. Responsibilities at home are shared. And as I say, we have a lot to learn from that, I think, in our own countries. To be successful here, I think collaboration and co-creation is really important, working in partnership with your clients and partners to share ideas and to embed two-way learning. And I think the key takeaway from this slide is the Icelandic phrase there, which is their motto, "Þetta reddast," which basically means everything will work out, finally. Think of Iceland as a small community. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone is related, or they went to school together, or they were school friends, or they know a friend of a friend. And they will all want to say in the work that you're doing. So proactive engagement is key. Key takeaways. Icelandic is a way of being. They are a unique and proud nation. They are collaborative and love co-creating and learning. They are forward-thinking, fun, and passionate. You only have to remember the European Games. But be warned, it's contagious. Any solutions should be right-sized and localized. They should leverage the great resources that they have here in Iceland and provide the best return on investment. Remember, everyone knows everyone, and as I keep telling my friends in London, there is no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. Thank you. I will now hand you back to Steinan for the wrap-up. Thank you.